wrong with you?
Low battery.
You home, sweetie?
We jumped out a window.
What was that?
We jumped out a window. Harry baby. Harry baby.
And welcome to Time About the Movies, everybody. We are now at the holiday season of 2014, November 7th, 2014. We got two big new releases from Disney and the latest one from Christopher Nolan, along with an Oscar bait movie this year with about the story of Stephen Hawking, featuring an Oscar-winning performance by Eddie Redmayne. We have a lot to get to here, so let's just get to it. Let's start off with the biggest of the three new releases, and that is Disney's Big Hero 6. This is an action-packed comedy adventure about the special bond that develops between Baymax, voiced by Scott Adsit from 30 Rock, a plus-size inflatable robot, and protege Hiro Hamada, played by Ryan Potter. When a devastating event befalls the city of San Francisco, of course, a mixture of San Francisco and Tokyo, kind of like how Hey Arnold is supposed to be like a mix between Seattle and New York, and catapults Hiro into the midst of danger. He turns to Baymax and his close friends to discover the mystery, and Hiro transforms his friends into a band of high-tech heroes called Big Hero 6. Now, this is based off of a Marvel comic book by Man of Action, which is also the same people that gave us the Cartoon Network series Ben 10. This is Disney again. This is their first big animated movie since Frozen, so there was a lot at stake for Disney, especially since Frozen was their biggest hit to date at that point. This is one of their more experimental animated movies, like Wreck-It Ralph was, as this is the first animated movie based off of a Marvel property. And, this is very much in the same vein as something like, it's having The Little Mermaid and then coming off of that and doing Rescuers Down Under, or, after Princess and the Frog came out, you do stuff like Tangled, which is a fairy tale that people go to see, and then the next movie you do is Winnie the Pooh. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work box office-wise, but the movies are still classics all across the board. And Big Hero 6 definitely is a worthy addition to its newer animated movies. This was a really solid animated film, and, the animation overall is great in this movie. The visual look of the city is really great. It's a unique style we haven't seen done before, and the rest of the film looks very impressive, too. I like the character designs overall, and it's a very gorgeous-looking film. The characters are nicely animated by these actors. I think nicely voiced by these actors. Nicely animated. What am I saying? Nicely voiced by these main actors, especially Baymax, with the great voice work that Adsit brings to the table with this. He's such a likable character, and the fact that even though he has no emotions, the performance itself is really where the emotions come from. He has the best moments in the entire movie. If there's one thing I'll say that's against the movie, it's the story. Not that it's bad or anything. Far from it. It's actually good, but there is a lot of elements of the story taken from How to Train Your Dragon. There's even scene structures that are not only taken from How to Train Your Dragon, but even the sequel that came out earlier in the year. I mean, it's not like another movie we'll develop into later on that rips off these other movies and tries to pretend it doesn't. I think they're fully aware of what kind of structure they want to take from this, and they do a good enough job of at least making us aware of that, but you could definitely see the little tidbits here and there of them stealing from How to Train Your Dragon a little bit here. But the real point of the movie where the film kind of falls apart is the villain and the reveal of who the villain is. And it's like, really? That's who the bad guy is? And just a heads up, it's not somebody there was a whole thing where people thought it was going to be, Hero's brother, who we see early on gets killed off, and you think, okay, he's probably going to be the bad guy in this. And it's not a character voiced by Alan Tudyk, even though he played a bad guy in the last two Disney animated movies, so there's your hit right there. It's basically James Cromwell's character. When they go into the twist of who this villain is and why the villain is doing what he's doing, the big question I had was, couldn't they have established this better? I mean, the main reason for why the villain is doing this is never mentioned early on in the movie. It's not until the big reveal of who the villain is that the rest of the characters see what he's doing, why he's doing it. It's just it makes no sense whatsoever. Even the ending is kind of a letdown overall. I mean, creatively, the final action sequence is nicely done. It has some very good moments in it. They added this in the subplot about this portal that's created by the villain and how the portal actually contains somebody who was believed to be dead, and it just feels forced, man. It just feels it felt like they forced it in there for no real reason, especially when the movie already killed off the main character's brother in the beginning, and yet this other character who we're just getting introduced to in the third act gets a chance to live, and it's unnecessary, and actually creates a plot loophole towards the very end of the movie. It's just kind of it almost took me out of the movie when I first saw it. It's kind of come on, man, really? You were doing so good up until we got to this point. I mean, yeah, the third act is really where the film struggles a lot, but despite it being a letdown, I didn't hate the movie. I still enjoy it. I still think it was a ton of fun to watch. I think the animation is good overall. The characters are really good. The story, although it does take a lot of hints from How to Train Your Dragon, is good as well. If there was a better villain in a third act that actually worked overall, I think you could have had something on the same vein as something like Frozen. But as it stands, still a good animated movie, but not one of the ones I would consider one of the best of the year. Like in a year where you have the Lego Movie and How to Train Your Dragon 2, I mean, you're not even going to be able to compete with a movie like this, so, yeah. Mixed opinion towards the very end of the movie, but for the most part, I enjoy Big Hero 6 enough, so. So now, let's go ahead and get to the one that I know is going to get a lot of people mad at me for saying this, because I'm sorry, I just feel like I have to say it about this movie. This is Christopher Nolan's worst thing he's ever made as a director. That's not saying it's bad, but we got to talk about Interstellar.
Interstellar, November 7, rated PG-13.
So in the not-too-distant future, next Sunday AD, sorry, I had to throw in some MST3K for you in there, but in the near future, Earth has been devastated by drought and famine, causing a scarcity in food and extreme changes in climate. When humanity is facing extinction, a mysterious rip in the space-time continuum is discovered, giving mankind the opportunity to widen their lifespan. A group of explorers must travel beyond our solar system in search of a planet that can sustain life. The crew of the Endurance are required to think bigger and go further than any human in history, as they embark on an interstellar voyage into the unknown. Coop, played by Matthew McConaughey, the pilot of the Endurance, must decide between seeing his children again and the future of the human race. And like I said, Christopher Nolan is a brilliant director. He's the guy that can take complicated movies that wouldn't appeal to the general masses but still make it work. Every movie he had made up to this point was a great movie, or at the very least a good movie. But as I always say, every good director is entitled to have at least one bad movie in his career. Steven Spielberg has had a couple of bad movies in his career. AI is one of those examples. Martin Scorsese had Kundun. Tim Burton has had several bad ones, and it was only a matter of time before Christopher Nolan had to strike out, and this was it. This, my friends, is the worst film that Christopher Nolan has made as a director. But this is not a bad movie. It's just not the masterpiece we were all expecting it to be. Trust me, nobody was more disappointed with this film than me when I was getting ready to see this. I was so excited for this when those trailers came out. I thought we were in for something amazing on the level of Gravity, maybe. And what was the end result? A movie that looks good on paper, but sucks in the story department. It's one of those type of films where the visuals are better than the actual movie, and ordinarily this is one of those films where I would say visuals don't make the movie, but positives first. I'll get to the good stuff. The acting overall is great. Matthew McConaughey is really good in the movie. He's got a great chemistry with everybody in the film. Anne Hathaway, Michael Caine, John Lithgow, his daughter Mackenzie Foy, one of her early film roles. The rest of the cast overall is good, but they're not as good as the main cast members overall. The visuals really are the selling point of the movie. They are gorgeous to look at, and on a big screen, they are amazing to look at. I saw this in Cinemark XD when it came out, and it was something that I still have memories of it, seeing it as big on the screen that I saw it in. And the film is pretty solid for the first hour and a half. And then, just like Airplane, the shit literally hits the fan. I mean, the turning point is when the movie begins. The turning point where the movie begins its inevitable downfall is when Michael Caine basically tells Cooper's daughter, who's now grown up to be played by Jessica Chastain, that he sent her father into space knowing that there was no way he could ever come back. So basically, he hired him and the rest of the crew to repopulate. I mean, you'd think someone would have brought this up as a possibility before they went to space, but no. But the part that really made me go like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, is when you have a character played by Matt Damon, who's a robot who was in a stasis on an icy, ammonia-saturated planet, who out of the blue, and I mean out of the blue, just decides to become a bad guy and kill Cooper and use their plan to come back to his planet. And once again, Christopher Nolan can't write regular villains to save his life. He's good at writing Batman villains well enough, but when he has to write an original villain, he's terrible at it. I mean, Marion Cotillard is a great actress, but I'm sorry, when she plays the villains in both Inception and even in The Dark Knight Rises, she was terrible as the bad guy. You could never buy her as a legitimate threat, and Matt Damon in this is never seen as a real threat in this movie. I mean, why does this movie even need to have a bad guy? It's supposed to be a realistic look at what's beyond our solar system. It's not supposed to be Inception in space. And then there's the scene where Matthew McConaughey goes into the Gargantua. Yeah, the big black hole is called Gargantua. And he ends up in a Tesseract, which, yeah, now we're ripping off the Avengers. I mean, Does this feel like Christopher Nolan to you? Because it certainly doesn't for me. I mean, I think Christopher Nolan is better than this, and ends up in a space where time is non-linear. Early in the film, there's a subplot about Cooper's daughter believing that there was a ghost in her room, because she keeps seeing paranormal activity in her room. This comes up in the scene much later in the film, and you can see where it comes around to. The ghost that's been haunting Cooper's daughter's room is Cooper himself, and the mystic beings that create the universe were the humans themselves. So basically, you ever see that episode of South Park where Mr. Garrison is puking after the doctor says, "Hey, by the way, you ever seen that movie Contact?" And basically the movie turns into this.
Ugh. Waited through that entire movie to see the alien, and it was her goddamn father.
They ripped off Contact. Of all the movies to rip off, why would you rip that one off? I mean, that wasn't even good the first time around. It's like when Disney tried to keep pushing this idea of a magical animated adventure where a human turns into bears. Hey, it didn't work with Mother Bear, but it will certainly work with Brave, which, no, it really didn't, even though it won a Best Animated Feature Oscar, which, I'm sorry, that's still one of Pixar's weakest movies overall. And I just love how the film just decided to change the mood of the kids when the daughter is a real jerk when she's younger, but she's more reasonable when she's older, and the son is reasonable when he's young, but he turns into a jerk when he's older, and there's no continuity here whatsoever. And if that wasn't insulting enough, guess what they do? They throw on this happy ending where they flash to the future where Cooper is now 124 years old and everybody is happy and singing Kumbaya. His daughter has created a new world in space. His daughter is reunited with him as a much older woman. Yeah, as a much older he's reanimated as a much older woman played by Ellen Burstyn. Like, after he makes amends with his daughter, he goes out and tries to find Brand, Anne Hathaway's character, who's on another planet. I mean, I don't think nothing could ever come close to the stupid ending of Artificial Intelligence, where, you know, they go and find the blue fairy and all that type of stuff. But man, this comes pretty damn close. I mean, I couldn't believe how much the second act kills the enjoyment of the movie from the first half. The first half of the movie was actually really good, and this is why the movie is such a massive disappointment. Not only is this movie way too long, 3 hours is just way too long for a movie like this. Well, you don't need 3 hours. You could take the second hour out, and I think the movie would have been fine overall. Sure, the ending would have been lousy, but at least would have been a tolerable short film of about 2 hours long. But 3 hours of watching this is just way too goddamn much. I mean, this should have been another Gravity. They should have just kept it short, make it more realistic, shouldn't have resorted to bringing in stupid action cliches and a lazy twist ending. But what this is just a massive disappointment from somebody you expect something great from. This represents the first major misstep for Christopher Nolan, with a second half that takes away all the good things that he had going in the first half and replace it with a boring, generic BS that takes the realism out of the film and replaces it with the same action film BS we've seen done to death over and over and over again. It really did feel like the movie just dropped directors in the second half and said, "Christopher Nolan, you're great and all, but we don't think you're making this movie too good. So we're gonna bring in this hack director. We're gonna bring in John R. Leonetti, because why not?" But yeah. But here's the good news, though. This is the worst thing Christopher Nolan has directed. Nothing has ever come close to being this bad. He has gone back to form. He has gone back to making great movies. Dunkirk, the next film we'll do, is great. I really like Tenet. I know a lot of people are kind of mixed on that overall, but I was really lucky enough to see that in theaters. That was one of the first movies I got to see post-COVID. And then, of course, Oppenheimer, which won him the Best Picture, well deserved. And The Odyssey looks amazing, too. So, yeah. This was the worst thing he did back then, but he has not sunk to this low yet. I think he realized that this movie was a movie that had a lot of high ambitions to it, but something happened with him in the second half of making this movie, because, my God, the second half of this movie was just a mess of a film. It takes away all the good things that made the first half worth it and replaces it with some of the most boring, generic BS bullshit you'll ever see in your life. I know I said BS bullshit twice, but yeah, it's just, you get the point. It takes the realism out of the film, and again, I'm just kind of repeating myself here, but despite all those problems, it's a gorgeous looking film. I would really consider giving it an extra star just for the visuals alone, but I can't do that. I mean, this movie had opportunity to give us something great and groundbreaking by the time it was over, but it just never did that. It's a visual spectacle with some good acting in it, so that's the only thing it's really got going for it. But other than that, though, the rest of it is just garbage, and it just feels so unlike a Christopher Nolan film, and it really pains me to say this because I love this guy as a director. I'm not saying this to badmouth the dude at all. I mean, like I said, he hasn't made a bad movie since then. So yeah, this was the one time in his illustrious career where it really felt like he was half-assing it, especially towards the second act. I mean, yeah, this movie isn't great, but it's not going to make me say I hate Christopher Nolan from this point going forward, because the guy has made much better films than this and continues to make better films to this very day. So yeah. There you go, Nolan fanboys. Come at me. You know, I love Christopher Nolan movies, but I'm sorry, I can't defend this stinker. This one was rough to get through. I mean, the first half was great, and then the second half, not so much. So, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here. Another movie that might get a little bit controversial because of what I'm about to say here, but Eddie Redmayne starring as Stephen Hawking in The Theory of Everything.
While there is life, there is hope.
The Theory of Everything, rated PG-13, now playing in select theaters.
Now, this is, of course, the story of the life of Stephen Hawking, set at the University of Cambridge. It details 3 decades of his life of Stephen Hawking, played by Eddie Redmayne, and also features the story of how he met his wife, played by Felicity Jones, dealing with his relationship with her ex-husband, his diagnosis of motor neuron disease, also known as amyotrophic lateral scoliosis, and his success in the field of physics. And this is a story where, I mean, yeah, it's about as Oscar baity as you can get, and as much as I love Eddie Redmayne's performance in this, I think it is the best thing about the movie. It's a mesmerizing, solid performance overall that really is the thing that holds it together. I mean, it's a good performance overall. Did I think it deserved to win Best Actor at the Oscars that year? No. And I'll say this because there was a much better performance that was in that category that year that should have gotten the award easily. In fact, a lot of the nominees in this category should have gotten the award over this. I mean, a good movie we're going to get to in a couple of weeks' time here. Selma has an outstanding performance by David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King Jr. that really should have been a performance that should have gotten an Oscar nomination, but sadly it didn't. I mean, this category has Steve Carell in Foxcatcher, which we're going to get to that in all a good time. Bradley Cooper in American Sniper. That movie overall I think is a little overrated, but his performance in that was pretty good. Benedict Cumberbatch in The Imitation Game, I think that should have won it. But Michael Keaton, I think should have won that award easily. I think, yeah, Eddie Redmayne's good in that movie, but he's not the best performance that year. Michael Keaton in Birdman was a mesmerizing character study of this guy, and basically mirroring Keaton's life in general. That should have been the Best Actor winner over these other performances, but yeah, this performance overall isn't that great. I'm taking that back. I mean, it's great. It's a great performance, but it's not great enough to win the Oscar, is what I'm trying to say. I think that this is a performance where I don't even want to say they gave it to him because of his body of work, because people didn't even know who this guy was for a number of years. I mean, his big breakout was Les Miserables a couple of years ago. And then because of this, and also because of his performance in The Danish Girl, he essentially got the role in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. He's the best thing about that movie, but those movies aren't that great either. And it's the fact that he also managed to not only win this Oscar, but do it after giving a bad performance in a film like Jupiter Ascending, which we're going to get to, because yeah, his performance in that movie is atrocious. But I'm bad-mouthing the guy as if he's a bad actor. He's not a bad actor. I mean, he was good in the movie. He was the one thing that was carrying that film overall, but you can't sit there and tell me that that's a great movie overall. It's a good movie that works because of his performance overall, but I'm sorry, it is a film that literally is falling into the typical Oscar bait territory. So, I mean, the writer of this movie has written a lot of Oscar bait films. I mean, this is the guy that wrote Anthony McCartan. This is the guy that wrote The Darkest Hour, the Gary Oldman movie where he won the Oscar, which basically that was a body of work performance. Bohemian Rhapsody was about as safe and marketable as a biopic as you could get, and that won Rami Malek the Oscar. I mean, Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. He's writing the Michael Jackson movie, for God's sakes. I mean, that should pretty much tell you, yeah, this guy is not really a great writer overall, but he makes movies that the Oscars love because they fall into the Oscar bait category. And this is definitely a film where it's just like, I can't really say it's a bad movie, because it's not a bad movie. It's a fine film. I just don't think it should have won Best Actor. Eddie Redmayne should have won Best Actor over somebody like Michael Keaton. It's like, I mean, it's not as bad as Colin Firth winning out over these great performances in 2010, Jeff Bridges in True Grit, Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception, Mark Wahlberg in The Fighter. Like, that I think is much worse than this. But this, yeah, there should have been, this wasn't the best performance that year, but it's a great performance overall. It's the one thing I will say makes me keep this movie in my collection. I still have a copy of this on DVD, and I still watch it every once in a while, because the performance overall is really good, and it is a fascinating story about Stephen Hawking's life before he eventually became the person that we all know him for. And surprisingly, no mentions of the Epstein Islands in this, surprisingly, but of course, this was years before anyone even knew, before most of us even knew what Epstein's Island was, but I digress. But anyway, not much more to say about this one, except that it's a good movie. I don't think it should have won Eddie Redmayne the Oscar overall. I think there were many good performances in that category that should have won that Oscar that year, but what are you going to do? I'm not in the Academy, unfortunately. Maybe someday, but no. And thus, with all that said, we wrap up another episode of Time About the Movies, and next time around, we have 5 movies, including one of the films I just mentioned in the last review. We have the sequel that somebody was asking for 20 years later. The Farrelly Brothers return to bring us Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber 2. Is it better than Dumb and Dumberer? Sort of, but it's complicated. We'll touch on that tomorrow. But we'll also take a look at Goomba Mbatha Raw starring in the film Beyond the Lights. We have Jon Stewart making his directorial debut with one of the more underrated films of the year, Rosewater, the movie that everyone is waiting for. I mean, who could resist Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas? And then the aforementioned Foxcatcher. We'll take a look at that, featuring some great performances by Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, and Jonah Hill among that cast. But we'll take a look at those 5 films coming up tomorrow on the show, so be on the lookout for that. With all that said, though, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and do me the honors of hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification button. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist, and don't forget to check out the previous episode we did. Up there. There we go. So with all that said, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.